Streetlights barely touched the pavement while a young figure sprinted through a quiet New Orleans block with a pistol still warm in his shaking hand and sirens floating somewhere behind him like distant growls chasing a ghost. His breath hit the cold air hard while his shoes slapped. Cracked concrete near a body, he stepped around without hesitation. Nobody knew his name on that corner, yet many whispered it across courtyards and cell blocks in later years, like they were speaking about a storm that never stopped moving. Terrance Gangsta Williams grew inside that shadowed world as a kid, shaped by hitters older than him and guided by brothers Birdman and Slim long before the city understood his reach. New Orleans moved different in the early 80s since the whole city felt like it slipped underwater even before the levees ever did, and every corner carried weight that soaked into young minds walking home from school. The oil crash crushed blue-collar families across Orleans Parish, while men who once worked steady shifts watched paychecks fade and neighborhoods collapse in slow motion. Jobs dried up around the riverfront, while grown folks argued about rent and grocery bills as if the walls were listening for weakness. Streets responded by filling themselves with fast cash hustlers, pushing heroin or crack through pockets of the city like Callio, Magnolia, Iberville, and Melf that became hubs for survival and danger. Kids walked through these project courtyards watching trembling addicts lean against stair rails, while older hustlers counted small fortunes on balconies, overlooking the same playgrounds where toddlers chased broken toys. Blocks like Louisiana Avenue, Earhart Boulevard, and Washington Avenue grew louder each season as crews battled for control of corners that never stayed stable for very long. Many residents remembered the city as festive and soulful, yet younger kids learned a harsher soundtrack carved by pistols, sirens, and arguments that ended with smoke rising from sidewalks. Violence shaped entire generations through small lessons they never asked for, since funerals occurred often enough to feel routine inside those housing developments. Children carried those memories like heavy bags stuffed with scenes they could not forget as they watched men gain respect by intimidation rather than guidance. Gunshots echoed nearly every week in the mid-'80s while families ducked inside cramped apartments patched with old furniture and hopes that stretched thin. Kids observed everything since nobody shielded them properly from the daily chaos, and their innocence eroded slowly through endless nights filled with noise that rattled bedroom windows. Many boys learned street codes before learning long division because the wrong look or misstep could lead to serious trouble faster than any teacher could explain. Those codes traveled through whispers at basketball courts or breezeways where older teens schooled younger ones with warnings carved from real fear. Police corruption added another layer of instability since officers behaved unpredictably across many wards, and trust in authority barely existed in places hardest hit by poverty. Some cops shook down hustlers for quick money, while others ignored crimes that demanded attention, and families understood they needed to protect themselves rather than depend on unreliable systems. This climate created a mindset where survival meant thinking fast, staying alert, and understanding which blocks welcomed strangers and which blocks swallowed them whole. Many households struggled to create structure for their children, while Project Life kept swallowing spare hours with stress and exhaustion. Young boys learned to navigate these patterns like maze paths that punished hesitation. Inside this unstable world lived the Williams family, a large blended group tied together through blood, yet spread across different pockets of the city. Their father, Johnny Williams, fathered more than 20 children and rarely offered consistent direction, leaving many siblings to build their paths without firm guidance. Terrance grew up watching Birdman and Slim move through neighborhoods with confidence that drew attention from peers and older figures who respected their presence. Birdman flashed new gear, cars, and jewelry, which convinced Terrance that admiration followed those who projected strength and fearlessness. That glow pulled him closer toward choices he barely understood, yet accepted as necessary within their environment. The household buzzed with siblings, chasing opportunity in unstable ways, and Terrance studied each move like lessons sent from the streets themselves. He noticed that authority grew from reputation rather than age in these neighborhoods, and he wanted that same acknowledgement from those he admired most. Many boys his age searched for mentors and coaches or teachers, while Terrance found his examples in brothers navigating both music dreams and shadow dealings. Those dynamics forged his belief that respect came through decisive action rather than careful planning. The idea settled into his personality slowly as he handled everyday life alongside older teens who shaped his thinking. Every block he walked through carried invisible reminders that the city raised children inside conditions many adults struggled to manage. Terrance traveled along cracked sidewalks that felt like battlegrounds long before he held any weapon, since danger lingered around nearly every courtyard. Tension twisted through alleys and rooftops, while boys memorized shortcuts around their neighborhoods to avoid conflicts that appeared without warning. That environment molded his instincts early and prepared the ground for choices that shifted his future permanently. The next chapter of his life would develop inside those same courtyards, shaped by pressure, struggle, and expectations that pushed him toward the edge quickly. Gert Town shaped Terrance early, since that neighborhood carried scenes that stayed heavy on young minds every single day. He walked past lifeless bodies sprawled near Monroe Street while older folks whispered names he barely recognized from earlier fights. His childhood mixed regular errands with wild memories, since police tape marked sidewalks he used for playtime with local kids. Terrance watched older brothers roll through Gert Town with shiny jewelry and cars that turned heads around Clara Street. That lifestyle created new dreams inside his mind while he studied how attention followed confidence in those moments. His brothers taught him nothing directly, yet their movements carved ideas that shaped his thinking during those early years. He saw Birdman and Slim draw crowds near Earhart Boulevard, since people respected their hustle and their fearlessness during chaotic times. Terrance admired that glow around them, since every kid from that area wanted respect from the streets. Those seeds grew quietly while he followed older teens who talked about money, reputations, and survival inside Gert Town. He absorbed slang, gestures, and behaviors from boys barely older, since mentors were rare inside his home. Terrance rarely discussed those experiences with adults, since emotional conversations felt pointless in his noisy environment. He watched situations play out around him daily, while growing comfortable with sights that shocked other children quickly. The family left Gert Town for Callio Projects during the mid-'80s, and the transition felt immediate for young Terrance. Callio carried a different energy, since heroin transactions filled stairwells near Orleans Avenue each morning. Hustlers controlled breezeways, while addicts drifted around courtyards, waiting for sellers with tiny bags tucked in socks. Terrance moved through those staircases like a local after only a few weeks, since kids learned terrain fast. Violence touched Callio often, and he memorized which corners stayed dangerous after dark. He used those observations to guide his routines, since stray moments could ruin a young boy. Terrance felt that shift deeply, since his earlier neighborhood held instability, while Callio displayed danger at every turn. He studied conversations held by dealers near South Robertson Street, since knowledge kept children safe during tense periods. His eyes learned more than his textbooks, since Callio classrooms taught survival first. He pushed through crowded hallways at home while siblings argued about money and discipline without real structure. That environment raised him faster than expected, since chaos forced him to grow up quickly. Birdman carried even stronger influence, since Terrance admired everything surrounding him, from jewelry to presents. He finally received a chilling lesson one afternoon when Birdman called him into a car parked on the block. Birdman placed a .22 pistol into Terrance's small hands during that ride while speaking in a calm tone. Terrance listened carefully, since the moment felt serious and strangely exciting at the same time. Birdman pointed out a target, and Terrance stepped out the car with shaky confidence. The hit occurred when Terrance barely understood consequences, since he followed instructions without hesitation. He pulled the trigger at 11 years old and walked back to the car silently. The aftermath felt surreal, since young Terrance expected shoes or gifts for performing a task adults praised secretly. Birdman drove him home with a nod that Terrance misread as approval, which pushed him deeper. That moment carved a permanent mark inside his thinking, since reward followed violence in his world. Terrance connected action with recognition quickly, since childhood validation mattered heavily to him. His young age made him vulnerable to influence, which amplified the impact of that incident. Psychological shifts developed fast since Terrance tied praise to brutality while ignoring emotional discomfort that surfaced briefly. He found himself chasing acknowledgement from older figures since approval shaped his confidence daily. Every task felt like an opportunity to stand taller near brothers he admired deeply. Violence changed from a terrifying shock into a job that demanded calm focus during stressful situations. He learned to hold his breath, watch movements, and control nerves while carrying small firearms. His stepfather sometimes sent him on errands to purchase heroin from familiar dealers near courtyards. Terrance completed those missions without hesitation since errands created new layers of street experience. These responsibilities shaped bonds he never created with guardians at home, since the streets taught him lessons about identity. He connected with hustlers who respected boldness since many adults around him failed to provide emotional guidance. Terrance embraced that world fully since it offered structure through power, money, and recognition. He viewed danger as an everyday part of life since fear faded with repeated exposure. His evolution started in Girt Town and transformed rapidly inside projects where violence shaped his path early. Terrance walked deeper into that lifestyle during his youth while believing he finally understood his purpose. Terrance first met a skinny kid named Mosquito near the back section of projects during a warm afternoon when local teens argued over dice games near the courtyard. The boy earned that nickname since he moved fast and talked rapidly while darting around trouble with slick footwork. Terrance noticed his sharp instincts early since Mosquito watched everything happening around him with cautious eyes that never rested long. They clicked instantly during a small scuffle with older boys near the Robinson Street side since both refused to fold under pressure. Their friendship grew naturally since they shared similar struggles at home and similar hunger for respect on the streets. These two boys walked through as if the courtyards belonged to them despite their young ages, since survival shaped their steps every day. They learned quick lessons while roaming stairwells, where hustlers monitored movement closely and addicts muttered stories nobody understood fully. Terrance and Mosquito handled petty thefts around Orleans Avenue by snatching wallets or small items from unwatched pockets. They studied older teens who moved drugs through narrow hallways since knowledge passed silently in those cramped spaces. Their early missions involved minor tasks, yet those missions taught them confidence when navigating dangerous areas. Mosquito admired Terrance's bold energy, while Terrance respected Mosquito's speed and awareness during heated moments. Their bond strengthened after multiple fights where they protected each other from larger groups around the playground area. That partnership turned into something stronger than typical childhood friendships, since both boys chased acceptance from powerful figures in their neighborhood. They practiced street tricks like wrapping guns in shirts, timing quick exits, or watching rival blocks without drawing suspicion. Their movements grew sharper each month while their curiosity about deeper street activity increased steadily. Birdman and Slim noticed their presence around the projects, since Terrance already carried family ties and displayed fearlessness beyond his years. The brothers gave small tasks to the pair like running messages across Magnolia Street or scouting corners during tense hours. Terrance accepted assignments proudly since acknowledgement from Birdman felt like real validation. Mosquito followed closely since he trusted Terrance's judgment and wanted entry into respected circles. These tasks prepared them for larger missions as they built reputations inside the project walls. Their early body count grew faster than their ages suggested since Terrance already proved himself at 11. Mosquito joined him on missions that required steady nerves and quick movement through dark alleys behind buildings. They learned to breathe calmly before striking targets named by older figures who wanted problems handled quietly. Their teamwork became efficient during nighttime movements across Washington Avenue since both communicated with short whispers and confident gestures. Violence turned into routine work, performed with chilling consistency by these teenagers. Terrance grew proud of his value to Birdman since that relationship fueled his sense of purpose. He felt needed and respected when older men asked him to handle important assignments in hostile areas. Mosquito supported Terrance on every move while proving his own worth through fearless execution. That fearlessness created a reputation that followed him around Callio like a shadow that warned strangers. Their code remained simple from the start since they agreed to move quiet, strike hard, and vanish before sirens reached their blocks. The streets shaped their mentality since both boys gained admiration while slipping deeper into violent lifestyles. Their names surfaced in hushed conversations around St. Mary Street whenever a robbery went down smoothly. They targeted small drug spots run by inexperienced dealers since those places offered quick money and minimal resistance. Terrance handled firearms with growing precision after every encounter while guiding Mosquito through tricky moments that required fast decisions. People around Callio recognized their presence, yet rarely confronted them since danger followed wherever they walked. Their random shootings emerged from orders given by older associates who trusted them with sensitive missions. Terrance moved across familiar intersections during nighttime operations, while Mosquito scanned rooftops and corners. Neighbors whispered about unidentified teenagers running through courtyards after hearing shots near Magnolia Street. Those whispers pointed toward Terrance and Mosquito, although few people spoke openly since retaliation felt possible. Their actions transformed them from wild boys into neighborhood phantoms, capable of reaching any target around uptown or downtown without hesitation. These teenagers carried themselves with confidence few young men possessed during the mid-'80s, since respect fueled their momentum heavily. Every job sharpened their instincts as they drifted deeper into violent circles connected to established hustlers. Terrance felt unstoppable during those years since missions boosted his reputation and expanded his social reach. Mosquito increased his boldness after every successful move since mistakes became rare during assignments. Their activities blurred typical childhood experiences and replaced them with a dangerous rhythm guided by older figures watching from distance. Their bond set the foundation for something larger that began forming around Callio as new alliances emerged between young hitters. Terrance and Mosquito gained loyal associates through tasks completed across project blocks and abandoned buildings. That growing circle began evolving into a feared group that later influenced a name carried by legends. Those seeds eventually paved the path toward the earliest form of the Hot Boys Street Clique, which shaped New Orleans history in unforgettable ways. Terrance moved deeper into Callio life, while Mosquito followed closely, and George Cookie Cooks joined them around that same period near the Orleans Avenue side. Cookie carried a calmer personality than both boys, yet his presence completed a triangle that made the group feel balanced. They drifted through the projects daily while discussing fast money and opportunities that popped up around courtyards. Terrance pushed the pace early since he already earned trust from older figures around Magnolia and Callio. Mosquito filled gaps during missions with his speed, while Cookie added steady control that kept their movement tight. They escalated their activities with stolen cars taken from streets near Earhart Boulevard and Melpomene Avenue, then used them for illegal joyrides across uptown. These rides allowed them to study different neighborhoods while building confidence behind the wheel in dangerous situations. Cookie cracked open ignitions quickly, while Mosquito served as lookout during late-night hunts for new vehicles. Terrance drove most escapes since he prided himself on controlling every route. They flipped some cars for money while keeping others parked near hidden alleys for emergency uses. Their name spread slowly as small rumors connected them to several missing vehicles around the city. Dope sales became another avenue for income as they moved small bags of heroin and cracked through courtyards near Magnolia Street. Terrance preferred directing exchanges near stairwells since they allowed quick disappearances during tense moments. Cookie handled packaging efforts while Mosquito delivered products at fast pace. Their small operation gained momentum during late teenage years, and several hustlers noticed the trio's rising influence. This attention pulled them closer to older men who recognized potential in their combined skill set. Sterling stepped into the picture during this period since everyone in the city knew his reputation for style and confidence. Sterling loved designer clothes, flashy cars, and heavy jewelry that turned heads across Magnolia projects. He moved with charisma that demanded attention and carried an aura that made younger boys study his movements. Sterling connected with Terrance after recognizing similar hunger for dominance and respect. Observers noticed their growing bond and understood something significant was forming between the two. Dooney entered soon after since his weight in Magnolia held serious value among street circles. Dooney operated as a heavy hitter known for strength, courage, and unwavering composure during violent moments. He carried a tone that made people listen instantly, and many younger hustlers tried to earn his approval. Dooney met Terrance during a heated incident involving rival boys near Clara Street. That confrontation nearly escalated into conflict until both sides realized mutual connections between Sterling and Terrance. Their tension dissolved into conversation, which later transformed into alliance. Terrance, Mosquito, Cookie, Sterling, and Dooney now formed a circle that intimidated corners from Callio to Magnolia. Their combined energy created a presence strong enough to shift neighborhood dynamics whenever they moved together. People watched quietly from balconies when the group walked through courtyards since danger often followed their arrival. Younger boys admired them deeply, while older figures recognized their growing strength. Their violent reputation began spreading across Uptown after several drug spots suffered hits connected loosely to their activities. Terrance planned many missions targeting small operations that lacked serious defenses. They stormed apartments used as stash houses, seized inventory, and left without leaving long trails. Mosquito handled lookout positions, while Cookie backed Terrance during confrontations. These robberies created new streams of profit, which helped them upgrade weapons and expand influence. Extortion became another method used to build authority around Callio and Magnolia. Terrance and Sterling approached smaller hustlers operating within their radius and demanded percentages in exchange for protection. Many agreed quickly since refusing often resulted in beatings or stolen product. Their pressure created fear that spread through narrow walkways and common spaces inside both projects. They built reputations as young men capable of enforcing their demands with precision. Their movements extended into rival territory near Josephine Street and MLK Boulevard as they pushed boundaries with increasing confidence. Terrance loved prowling areas associated with Melf projects since conflict made him feel alive. Mosquito tracked foot traffic while Cookie monitored escape routes that zigzagged between leaning fences and cluttered alleys. Their ability to break into unsafe territory and escape without serious setbacks increased their mystique among street observers. The trio's habits evolved naturally into something larger than a small group of teenagers hustling for attention. Their skills sharpened daily as money, weapons, and influence multiplied around them. Many residents whispered that these boys moved with coordination that resembled organized street squads rather than reckless youths. Terrance commanded missions while Sterling handled charisma and Dooney supplied physical force. Mosquito provided speed and Cookie delivered calm reasoning, which balanced their operations. Residents around Magnolia began using the phrase "hot boys" to describe them since the group stayed involved in heated action regularly. The label carried weight long before Cash Money Records adopted the name for a rap group in later years. Their street version of the Hot Boys moved with an aura that made locals stay alert whenever they appeared. Stories followed them throughout New Orleans, like legends whispered during late-night conversations. Their name traveled across housing complexes as young kids imagined them as fearless figures who navigated danger with chilling calmness. That movement shaped local urban mythos since their exploits echoed through neighborhoods already drowning in conflict. The original Hot Boys stood for speed, violence, and youthful bravado that shocked even older men who witnessed countless gangs rise and fall. Terrance and his partners pushed their reputations toward mythical levels through robberies, extortion, and raw aggression. Their influence carved pathways that impacted generations of street culture around New Orleans. Their origins set the stage for deeper involvement in criminal worlds that awaited them during upcoming years. Terrance sharpened his approach during these years, while the Hot Boys moved through Callio and Magnolia with steady confidence. Their methods turned colder as they learned how to walk up on marked targets without hesitation during nighttime missions. Terrance preferred stepping close instead of firing from distance since accuracy mattered heavily to him. He approached victims quietly while Mosquito scanned surrounding windows for sudden movement. Cookie waited near corners to guide escape routes after shots rang out. The group left scenes immediately after completing missions, while avoiding long exchanges that invited police attention. Payments often surprised outsiders since Terrance accepted clothes, jewelry, or shopping sprees instead of heavy cash during his early years. Birdman sometimes rewarded him with fresh outfits or designer sneakers that elevated his status among peers. Those gifts controlled Terrance's loyalty since recognition from family meant more than large stacks of money. Mosquito and Cookie followed similar patterns by taking rewards connected to street luxury rather than income. Their motivations reflected their youth since affection and validation mattered strongly during those periods. The crew intensified their activities by targeting several drug suppliers known as plugs throughout uptown and downtown. Terrance loved creative approaches during robberies and sometimes used fake police routines to disarm victims mentally. They stormed apartments pretending to conduct raids using loud commands and bright flashlights. Dealers panicked instantly since police appearances meant serious consequences for anyone holding large quantities of heroin or crack. Terrance snatched product while Cookie collected cash and weapons from kitchen counters or bedroom closets. Mosquito provided surveillance near doorways to ensure smooth exits once the robbery ended. Another tactic involved sedating victims inside trap apartments using spiked drinks prepared earlier during social gatherings. Terrance waited patiently until the target showed signs of dizziness before ordering the team to strip the place clean. They grabbed kilos, cash bundles, and ammunition from secret compartments hidden beneath floorboards or inside vents. These ambushes left plugs confused about what happened since the incidents lacked traditional violence. Terrance enjoyed the psychological advantage gained from such creative moves since victims rarely identified suspects accurately. They often spread false rumors after robberies to mislead enemies seeking payback throughout Callio or Magnolia. Terrance encouraged locals to whisper stories about rival crews involved in such crimes. These misleading narratives traveled swiftly through courtyards and street corners since gossip fueled neighborhood tension. Mosquito added further confusion by mentioning fabricated details when questioned by acquaintances. This chaos protected the hot boys from immediate retaliation while allowing them to continue operations freely. Several New Orleans residents recalled tales of stolen kilos buried across fields or abandoned yards. Terrance allegedly hid multiple packages in drainage areas near Washington Avenue before relocating them later. These stories circulated widely since buried product created mystery that fascinated younger hustlers. Their activities spread beyond city limits as the group expanded into Texas and other parts of the Gulf region. Terrance enjoyed road trips since traveling allowed them to target dealers unfamiliar with their identities. They visited Houston, Beaumont, and Port Arthur during certain periods while hunting for vulnerable plugs. Terrance designed schemes that involved stopping vehicles along highways disguised as state troopers using flashing lights. Cookie approached cars wearing dark clothing to simulate official authority during stressful moments. Victims surrendered drugs and money quickly since the routine felt legitimate to untrained eyes. These robberies produced significant profit and elevated the hot boys' ranking among New Orleans criminals. Despite intense action, Terrance balanced robberies, heroin distribution, and contract hits with surprising discipline. He managed supply chains through small networks operating inside Callio stairwells. Mosquito handled distribution among younger hustlers, while Cookie coordinated stash locations for safety. Terrance completed hits requested by older associates who trusted his reliability during dangerous assignments. He executed each mission with precision, shaped by years of practice throughout Uptown. His schedule filled with tasks from early morning exchanges to midnight operations across rival territories. The ability to juggle multiple criminal duties demonstrated Terrance's developing leadership skills. Momentum behind Terrance grew quickly as law enforcement noticed patterns connected to rising incidents. Detectives within New Orleans Police Department reviewed similar robberies across several districts. Reports describe suspects moving rapidly through neighborhoods after strikes with limited evidence left behind. Terrance's fingerprints rarely appeared at scenes since he respected disciplined habits during missions. Witnesses described unidentified teenagers wearing hooded clothing and carrying firearms near targets shortly before violent acts. Officers monitored Magnolia and Callio areas more frequently since rumors pointed toward groups linked to both projects. Federal attention rose after robberies began involving large quantities of heroin and cocaine. Authorities recognized connections between plugs losing product and individuals associated with gangs around New Orleans. Terrance's street name surfaced occasionally during investigations, although concrete evidence remained limited. Law enforcement compiled files containing witness statements, surveillance notes, and maps linking movement patterns across districts. The trio continued operations despite subtle warnings from adults urging caution. Their growing notoriety created an aura that pulled them deeper into dangerous environments. Terrance gained legendary status among younger teens around Uptown who whispered stories about his missions. They admired his boldness during robberies and his cold precision when handling firearms. His journey from childhood shooter to respected hitman fascinated youth raised around constant violence. Terrance walked through courtyards with quiet confidence since people recognized his reputation instantly. That attention strengthened his influence over a new generation seeking identity within chaotic neighborhoods. His legend grew through conversations held in Louisiana streets and New Orleans bars. Law enforcement pressure increased steadily as Terrance became a name monitored across multiple districts. Officers compiled deeper profiles on the hot boys while tracking activity linked to Terrance. His skill kept him free temporarily, although inevitable consequences approached rapidly. Terrance pushed forward undeterred as expanded activity positioned him at the center of growing criminal networks across the region. Hostility between Magnolia and Melf projects stretched back many years as cultural pride shaped rivalries across Uptown. Magnolia residents carried strong neighborhood identity, while Melf crews bragged about toughness during street gatherings. Young men from both sides clashed verbally at block parties, while crowds listened closely to every insult. Tension increased whenever crews crossed paths near Louisiana Avenue or Washington Avenue during busy evenings. Every project produced legends, and every legend carried followers who defended their reputations fiercely. These rivalries intensified during the mid-'80s as younger kids followed older figures into dangerous conflicts. The pressure finally exploded during the Superdome Greek show when thousands filled the stadium for festivities. Energy felt electric inside that building while crews from several neighborhoods walked through crowded hallways. Magnolia boys traded verbal shots with Melf representatives near concession stands before fists suddenly flew. Terrance stood near Mosquito when chaos erupted and fights spilled across multiple rows. He became trapped between swinging bodies until a sharp blade pierced his lower side violently. Terrance staggered backward, bleeding heavily, while Mosquito grabbed his arm to guide escape. They slipped through panicked crowds before reaching an exit leading to the dome's parking areas. Terrance survived after receiving medical help from trusted individuals who feared hospital questions. His stabbing fueled anger that circulated through Magnolia's younger circle within hours. Magnolia crews rolled into Melf days later, riding packed cars filled with tense boys gripping firearms. They circled Melf projects while scanning balconies and walkways for anyone associated with the Superdome incident. Shots rang out near Martin Luther King Boulevard as Magnolia members targeted visible figures standing outside. These payback missions created shock among families living inside those buildings since bullets struck several random walls. Children hid inside bedrooms while adults pulled couches away from windows to avoid stray gunfire. Melf retaliated quickly by sending gunmen toward Magnolia using stolen vehicles and disguised outfits. They crept along Clara Street and Galvez Street, waiting for Magnolia members to appear near storefronts. Groups of teens sprinted for cover when gunmen opened fire during sudden drive-by attacks. Everyday residents suffered during these exchanges since project buildings lacked proper protective structures. Stray rounds pierced parked cars, windows, and fences during these endless battles between rival blocks. New Orleans police responded occasionally, although officers rarely solved cases involving masked shooters. Violence intensified when tragedy struck Terrance personally through the murder of Mosquito. Reports indicated Mosquito encountered enemies near an alleyway close to Melf territory during late evening hours. He attempted to flee after spotting trouble approaching, yet bullets struck him multiple times before help arrived. Terrance received news from a friend who ran into Callio crying uncontrollably. The loss shattered Terrance emotionally since Mosquito served as his closest partner since childhood. He mourned privately while struggling to understand the sudden emptiness around him. Terrance vowed to locate suspects responsible and traveled through neighborhoods seeking information aggressively. People whispered clues about potential shooters, although details remained scattered among frightened witnesses. Terrance pursued leads tirelessly while carrying fearsome determination across uptown streets. Pain deepened further after Sterling died during another series of violent episodes involving rival crews. Sterling's passing shocked many since his charisma and influence reached far across Magnolia. Details circulated that he fell victim during a confrontation involving armed individuals near Iberville and Melf regions. His death shook the hot boys severely since Sterling represented leadership within their growing circle. Terrance lost another major figure who guided him through difficult phases in earlier years. Anger swept through Magnolia as crews launched retaliatory raids toward Melf in rapid succession. Cars chased rivals through narrow roads near Iberville, while gunshots echoed loudly across midnight air. Police sirens filled downtown streets after multiple reports of shootouts erupting near housing complexes. Terrance found himself involved in several shootings during these turbulent months while navigating dangerous situations constantly. He fired at enemies near abandoned houses when ambushed unexpectedly during evening walks. Another incident involved rivals attempting to corner him behind a store near Louisiana Avenue. Terrance ducked behind dumpsters while returning fire with controlled bursts learned through repeated experience. He escaped multiple ambushes by sprinting through yards and hopping fences across Callio. Survival required instinctive reactions, since hesitation often ended careers in uptown street life. Terrance carried bullet wounds from some confrontations, yet continued operating despite mounting injuries. The city turned hotter each week as Magnolia and Melf traded losses with no sign of slowing. These conflicts shaped Terrance's personality significantly since grief, anger, and survival blended inside his daily routines. Deaths within his circle hardened his mindset, which aligned him further with the violent mission path forming ahead. Every moment on those streets reminded him of Mosquito, Sterling, and countless others swallowed by relentless warfare. Terrance walked deeper into that world with strengthened resolve as New Orleans continued burning with fierce neighborhood rivalries. Birdman and Slim pushed Cash Money records forward during the early 90s, while street crews like the Hot Boys gained heavy notoriety across uptown. New Orleans embraced bounce music as local DJs blasted fast rhythms through project courtyards and packed clubs. Artists like UNLV helped Cash Money rise with songs that represented Magnolia culture directly. Pimp Daddy brought charisma and sharp storytelling that resonated loudly around downtown neighborhoods. Kilo G delivered darker themes that connected strongly with younger hustlers moving through Callio's stairwells. These artists shaped the early blueprint for Cash Money's identity, while Birdman studied shifting trends closely. Hustler influence played a major role since many early supporters came from neighborhoods controlled by resilient street figures. Terrance observed Birdman's determination while watching studio sessions occur inside modest rooms filled with ambition. Cash Money grew slowly while Birdman secured local features, producers and DJs who believed in the movement. Slim handled money management carefully while protecting the label from unnecessary risks. People inside New Orleans witnessed this rise firsthand while observing connections between local artists and respected hustlers. The city's musical energy mixed with street culture naturally, since talent often emerged from tough environments. The Hot Boys rap group formed later, with Juvenile, Lil Wayne, BG, and Turk representing the next wave of talent. Juvenile had strong presence around Magnolia, while Wayne grew quickly under Birdman's guidance. BG delivered raw authenticity shaped by uptown struggles, while Turk carried flair connected to earlier projects. Their chemistry reflected New Orleans culture completely, and fans gravitated toward their sound rapidly. Terrance claimed he suggested the group name since he used the Hot Boys title with his street crew earlier. People debated that connection frequently since both versions carried strong reputations inside local lore. Rumors of drug money involvement swirled around Cash Money during its early climb. Sterling traveled with Cash Money acts occasionally, and stories suggested he served as security during road tours. His intimidating presence helped to protect artists from aggressive crowds or dangerous situations in unfamiliar cities. Terrance spoke about moving heroin while traveling with certain Cash Money affiliates during specific periods. He described missions where product changed hands quickly while he visited Houston and other Gulf Coast areas. These statements fueled speculation that Cash Money operated with financial assistance from street activity at one point. One story involved Terrance claiming he provided Birdman with nearly $100,000 earned from robberies and heroin sales. That claim circulated widely across New Orleans streets as people attempted to understand the truth. Many residents doubted direct involvement since no concrete evidence surfaced, linking the label to large-scale narcotics operations. Terrance sometimes shared details on interviews that enhanced the myth surrounding early Cash Money dealings. Fans wondered how much of his statements reflected reality and how much came from prideful exaggeration. Project residents argued daily about Terrance's actual role in supporting the label during difficult years. Confusion grew since rumors mixed with partial facts and first-hand stories told by unreliable sources. Understanding the real connection between the streets and the label required measured context rather than sensational claims. Cash Money operated near violent neighborhoods while some artists maintained friendships with respected figures across Magnolia and Callio. That closeness created natural overlap between musicians and individuals involved in dangerous lifestyles. The streets admired Cash Money rappers since their lyrics represented daily struggles encountered across Orleans Parish. Terrance and his partners moved within the same city landscape, yet pursued separate missions built on criminal activity. The label focused on music distribution, recording sessions, and concert promotions, while street crews handled survival using tactics shaped by violence. Terrance occasionally stepped into Cash Money circles, since Birdman remained his older brother with strong influence over him. Yet Terrance's world revolved around robberies, heroin distribution, and targeted hits that built his identity. Cash Money continued thriving musically without leaning on Terrance's criminal achievements. Their paths ran close together geographically while diverging sharply regarding long-term objectives. Fans later blended both worlds into single narratives that exaggerated connections for entertainment or shock value. Some individuals assumed Cash Money depended heavily on street finances while ignoring legitimate business moves. Others insisted Terrance played crucial roles during the formative years, although evidence remained inconsistent. The truth sat somewhere within a messy space shaped by proximity, family ties, and shared hometown pride. Both worlds interacted occasionally while maintaining separate trajectories influenced by different goals and responsibilities. Terrance lived inside violent corners, while Cash Money created cultural waves that stretched far beyond New Orleans. Their journeys overlapped during certain moments while never functioning as identical operations. The label expanded into national success while Terrance descended deeper into criminal pursuits that defined his eventual fate. Each side influenced the city differently as New Orleans continued crafting legends from both music and street culture. Federal investigators tightened their focus on Terrance during the mid-90s as murder whispers spread through several New Orleans neighborhoods. Detectives monitored shootings linked loosely to Magnolia and Callio while hearing Terrance's name repeated during quiet street conversations. Rumors suggested he handled hits for older figures who trusted his precision during dangerous situations. These whispers caught the attention of federal agents who specialized in long-term investigations involving violent crews. The feds built files slowly while tracking movements around Washington Avenue, Louisiana Avenue, and several liquor stores known for neighborhood gatherings. Their goal involved constructing a full picture of Terrance's operations using surveillance tools that exceeded local police resources. Wiretaps became a primary weapon for investigators who believed Terrance managed heroin deals between New Orleans and New York. They tapped phones used by suspected associates while recording conversations that hinted at drug shipments arriving through various routes. Agents intercepted coded language referencing packages, travelers, and specific meeting points used by couriers. Terrance's voice surfaced occasionally during these wiretaps while he discussed business arrangements with individuals located beyond Louisiana. Informants also contributed information after arrest. Pressure convinced them cooperation offered reduced sentences. These informants passed details quietly to investigators while pretending loyalty toward Terrance during daily interactions. Surveillance operations intensified as agents followed Terrance through uptown alleys and downtown streets. They observed his meetings with associates near Magnolia Supermarket along Clara Street. They watched him enter apartments believed to contain heroin stash points near Callio projects. Undercover vehicles tailed him during nighttime travels while agents documented his patterns methodically. Footage captured Terrance meeting potential clients or partners in secluded parking lots. Investigators also analyzed his interactions with younger hustlers connected to distribution networks. Every recorded moment supported the government's belief that Terrance functioned as a central figure in a wide criminal scheme. The wiretaps captured several conversations involving Terrance negotiating heroin quantities with individuals located in New York. He described prices, travel plans, and distribution timelines in coded language that investigators deciphered gradually. Another set of recordings revealed discussions involving targeted killings requested by associates seeking retaliation. Terrance mentioned strategies for approaching victims quietly or identifying ideal moments to strike. These intercepted communications painted an alarming portrait of organized activity involving drugs and violence. Federal prosecutors collected these recordings and stored them alongside surveillance reports and informant statements. The arrest occurred in 1998 when agents executed coordinated raids at several New Orleans locations. They placed Terrance in cuffs after locating him during an operation involving multiple vehicles and heavily armed officers. He faced charges for continuing a criminal enterprise, solicitation to commit murder, among other offenses. These charges reflected the government's belief that Terrance operated as both drug trafficker and contract killer. The evidence pile included recorded calls, informant testimony, surveillance photographs, and financial records linked to drug transactions. Prosecutors also highlighted Terrance's violent history, which strengthened their narrative against him. During the raid cycle, agents searched his mother's home located near Washington Avenue, where they discovered $375,000 hidden inside. That money sparked wild stories across New Orleans, since residents speculated about its origins. Some locals claimed the cash represented profits from large heroin shipments moved through the city. Others believed Terrance stored robbery proceeds inside his mother's house for safekeeping. The discovery fueled myths that circulated for years as people debated Terrance's true financial reach. Families from Magnolia, Callio, and downtown spread different versions of the story through barbershops and porches. The government used the cash stash as proof that Terrance operated at a higher level than regular neighborhood hustlers. Terrance faced trial after prosecutors assembled a thorough case involving multiple witnesses and a mountain of recorded evidence. His legal team struggled to dismantle arguments built on lengthy investigations and months of surveillance work. Witnesses described Terrance's involvement in heroin activity and provided context for conversations captured through wiretaps. Prosecutors presented the jury with connections between Terrance and violent incidents linked to his associates. Jurors examined transcripts that outlined drug negotiations and plans for carrying out retaliatory attacks. This combination of evidence left minimal room for doubt during the proceedings. The court issued a life plus 20-year sentence after determining Terrance played a crucial role in a criminal organization. That sentence reflected the gravity of charges associated with murder solicitation and narcotics trafficking. Terrance listened as the judge explained the decision while acknowledging the destruction caused by his operations. The final ruling ended his long run as a feared street figure across New Orleans. His incarceration closed a chapter defined by robberies, violence, and large heroin profits. The sentence stunned many residents who followed Terrance's life since childhood. His fall marked a turning point for Magnolia and Callio, since younger generations watched a once powerful figure disappear into federal custody. Federal agents considered the case successful as it removed a significant player from New Orleans' violent landscape. Terrance's legend continued circulating through stories passed around corner stores and courtyards. People debated the investigation's fairness while acknowledging the depth of evidence presented at trial. His sentencing signaled the start of a long federal journey that shaped the remainder of his life. Terrance entered the federal system carrying the same instincts that kept him alive throughout Uptown. He adjusted quickly since prison operated like a slower version of the streets, with rules enforced by inmates instead of neighborhood legends. He learned which units handled business quietly and which units carried too much confusion for serious activity. Terrance connected with individuals who managed contraband routes that moved cigarettes, phones, and drugs through visiting rooms or corrupt staff. These connections helped him create a small network that generated steady income inside controlled environments. He smuggled heroin into federal facilities using strategies developed from years of street operations. Terrance communicated with outside associates who delivered packages through coded visits arranged weeks before each drop. Certain inmates assisted by concealing items inside clothing or food trays moved between housing units. Terrance rarely touched contraband physically, since experience taught him to separate management from transportation. Other inmates respected his discipline, since he avoided reckless behavior that endangered entire blocks. His calm approach allowed him to expand operations while staying aware of shifting alliances. Hidden phones played a major role in Terrance's communication system, and he protected them carefully. He stored devices inside ceilings, toilet compartments, or electrical panels where guards rarely searched thoroughly. These phones connected him to New Orleans streets and allowed him to guide business remotely. Terrance used coded language during calls while instructing associates about distribution, debt collection, and movement of money. Federal authorities attempted to disrupt these methods, yet Terrance usually stayed one step ahead. His understanding of criminal structure allowed him to adjust whenever risks increased unexpectedly. Birdman and Slim supported Terrance's children consistently while maintaining distance from Terrance personally. They sent money orders to help his kids survive without depending on unstable family members. Terrance appreciated those gestures, although he felt bitterness toward their emotional absence. He wanted deeper connection with his brothers, since they shared childhood memories and difficult experiences. That longing created tension inside Terrance, since loyalty intertwined with hurt during quiet nights. Terrance wrote letters expressing gratitude while hiding frustration toward their unwillingness to communicate openly. Slim believed Terrance needed to focus on spiritual growth, while Birdman focused on raising his own children. Terrance understood these positions intellectually, although his heart struggled with feelings of abandonment, Other inmates noticed him pacing around the yard during certain evenings while processing those emotions. He discussed these issues with close friends inside, who offered advice shaped by their own pain. Terrance continued sending messages to his brothers despite receiving limited responses. His loyalty remained intact even while resentment simmered beneath the surface. Prison forced Terrance to confront memories involving Mosquito, Sterling, and Dooney during long stretches of silence. He replayed scenes from Callio and Magnolia repeatedly while attempting to understand how each friend fell. Mosquito's death crushed Terrance deeply since their bond started during early childhood struggles. Sterling's tragic end reminded Terrance of the unpredictability that shaped their world. Dooney's passing hurt Terrance since the man represented protection and strength during violent episodes. Terrance realized each friend lived intensely while accepting constant danger as part of daily life. He believed prison saved him from joining them since his pace outside grew reckless before the arrest. Terrance admitted privately that survival beyond 1998 seemed unlikely if he remained free. He recognized how pride, rage, and addiction drove many choices that led to deadly outcomes. These reflections pushed him towards slow transformation during later years inside. He viewed incarceration as both punishment and unexpected opportunity to evaluate his entire journey. Religion entered Terrance's life gradually as he attended chapel services hosted by older inmates. He listened to sermons discussing forgiveness, regret, and rebuilding identity after destructive decisions. Terrance felt uncomfortable initially, since vulnerability conflicted with the persona he built across New Orleans. Over time, he embraced spiritual practices that softened resentment and clarified his thoughts. He prayed daily while asking for guidance to navigate internal conflict created by past choices. He read religious texts inside his cell during quiet hours while studying verses that address discipline and redemption. Terrance learned to manage anger through meditation rather than retaliation. Fellow inmates noticed his shift in behavior as he stepped away from certain conflicts. He continued participating in prison commerce, yet approached it with caution, influenced by spiritual development. This balance allowed him to maintain status while avoiding unnecessary trouble caused by impulsive decisions. Terrance dedicated later years inside to self-improvement while rewriting aspects of his character shaped by violence. He acknowledged the pain he caused families throughout New Orleans and wished to evolve beyond those destructive patterns. His transformation did not erase his past, yet created a framework for future decisions shaped by accountability. Prison offered structure that helped Terrance recognize deeper values than street prestige. His spiritual growth continued affecting his perspective long after he completed business transactions within federal walls. Terrance spent years inside federal custody before deciding to send a detailed letter to investigators requesting a meeting. He wrote carefully while explaining that he carried information involving several unsolved murders connected to deceased associates from New Orleans. Terrance believed cold cases needed closure since families waited decades for answers without receiving real clarity. He identified crimes involving individuals who died long before any cooperation occurred. Officers listened while Terrance recounted scenes from uptown, downtown, and several project blocks. They collected dates, locations, and involved parties before comparing statements with old evidence. Federal officials recognized value in Terrance's information since many victims lacked justice during earlier years. His accounts helped investigators understand patterns linked to violent crews active during the 80s and 90s. Terrance attempted to outline movements of certain individuals before acknowledging which deceased associates committed specific acts. His goal involved reducing confusion surrounding murders long buried under rumors. Detectives cross-referenced his descriptions with witness statements recorded during previous investigations. Terrance continued assisting while hoping his cooperation produced meaningful progress toward clearing unresolved files. In 2017, a police officer sent a letter stating Terrance contributed information to almost 40 cases. That letter circulated quietly until bloggers and journalists discovered references hidden inside public records online. The story erupted quickly once screenshots surfaced on social media platforms. Users questioned how Terrance accessed so many details regarding homicides stretching across several decades. The news spread across New Orleans neighborhoods as people speculated about the cases he discussed. Many residents remembered violent periods shaped by conflict between Magnolia, Melf, and Callio. Public reaction intensified once well-known rapper Boosie voiced strong criticism during interviews. He accused Terrance of cooperating with authorities and violating street principles that many hustlers respected deeply. Boosie's comments reached millions who watched clips spread across hip-hop outlets. Internet debates formed immediately involving arguments about whether snitching applied if all named individuals were deceased. Some claimed Terrance violated street loyalty, while others defended his decision based on a victim family seeking closure. Discussions flooded YouTube channels, Instagram pages, and barbershops across Louisiana. Terrance defended himself through interviews where he insisted no living person suffered consequences from his cooperation. He spoke calmly while explaining his choices and describing the emotional weight involved. Terrance reminded viewers that families deserved answers even when suspects died many years earlier. He claimed morality guided his actions during those moments rather than attempts to harm any active individuals. His tone carried regret while acknowledging pain caused by past violence. Hidden resentencing details generated additional controversy since court documents remained sealed under judicial protection. Observers questioned how his life sentence shifted into a release window that appeared unexpectedly. Legal experts attempted to interpret available information, although answers remained limited. Bloggers suggested deals occurred privately while noting Terrance's helpful participation. Yet no official statement clarified exact adjustments or timing of judicial changes. The moral split surrounding Terrance created heavy tension across street culture, legal circles, and entertainment communities. Many upheld strict codes that viewed cooperation negatively, despite involved individuals being deceased. Others believed Terrance acted responsibly by telling truth about events clouded by decades of silence. His decision highlighted complication between maintaining loyalty and pursuing closure for families. These conflicting values shaped long debates that continued after Terrance re-entered society. Terrance received a quiet resentencing in 2021 after federal review allowed modifications to his original punishment. Court records sealed portions of the order, which prevented journalists from uncovering deeper explanations. Early 2022 marked the moment Terrance walked free after more than 2 decades inside. His release shocked many since very few expected him to leave custody. Fans, rappers, and city residents reacted with confusion as information remained unclear. Some individuals questioned whether official paperwork contained errors while others suspected hidden agreements. Terrance avoided discussing legal specifics while focusing on rebuilding his life outside prison. Once home, Terrance entered the public eye by sharing detailed stories on YouTube. His channel grew quickly since viewers craved first-hand accounts of New Orleans street history. He spoke openly about Magnolia, Melf, Callio, and several crews active during earlier decades. Terrance used humor to lighten heavy topics while still delivering warnings about dangers tied to criminal life. Audiences appreciated his honesty and calm tone during long discussions. He traveled to speaking events where he addressed youth programs and community groups. His experiences allowed him to explain consequences many teens underestimated. Terrance blended cautionary messages with entertaining storytelling shaped by years of reflection. Debates reignited instantly across social media as Terrance gained new visibility. Some praised him for surviving violent conditions and transforming into a mentor. They viewed his interviews as valuable lessons for younger generations navigating hostile environments. These supporters celebrated his growth and encouraged him to continue educating communities. Others refused to forgive his cooperation and labeled him permanently as a rat. They argued that any cooperation damaged credibility for individuals raised under strict street codes. Viewers attacked each other online while arguing about Terrance's legacy. That split defined conversations surrounding his reemergence in modern culture. Birdman and Slim remained silent publicly when Terrance surfaced online. Their silence carried weight since people expected comments acknowledging their brother's return. Interviews featuring Birdman skipped questions related to Terrance entirely. Fans speculated about tension between siblings since none expressed open support. Terrance described private disappointment from his brothers during certain interviews. He claimed they preferred avoiding public association due to professional image concerns. Despite emotional distance, Terrance insisted he still loved them deeply and valued their accomplishments. Terrance built a new identity anchored in storytelling, humor, and reflection while navigating criticism from multiple directions. He embraced speaking roles while distancing himself from past violence. His journey into adulthood carried heavy scars, although he used them constructively. Crowds listened closely whenever he recounted memories of Magnolia or discussed federal prison experiences. Young viewers viewed him as a figure who survived intense hardships and returned wiser. Terrance continued addressing rumors patiently while refusing to attack rivals publicly. His release marked a symbolic moment in New Orleans history since many people grew up hearing tales of the Hot Boys street crew. Residents who lived through earlier decades watched a former figure attempt reinvention. Terrance maintained steady presence online despite ongoing criticism regarding cooperation. His life story remained complex as supporters and critics examined every detail. Terrance accepted this role since he understood that public curiosity never faded. He moved forward carefully while carrying lessons learned throughout difficult years. Terrance grew into a symbol of New Orleans history since his childhood violence reflected the city's harsh reality. Stories about street loyalty shaped by survival followed him through Magnolia courtyards and later through prison walls. His legend traveled across generations as older residents retold episodes involving robberies, hits, and escapes. Contradiction defined him since he built a fearsome reputation before promoting anti-violence messages after release. He carried memories of lives taken while guiding youth toward calmer paths. Terrance lived two identities that created long conversations about change, justice, and responsibility. Magnolia's demolition erased physical spaces where Terrance gained influence. The blocks collapsed while memories survived through documentaries, songs, and endless neighborhood conversations. Those streets disappeared while the myth remained alive. Lingering mysteries still surround him as rumors exaggerate his kill count and question Cash Money's awareness. Viewers wonder which details he skipped intentionally during interviews. These unanswered pieces maintain his complicated aura. Terrance's story stretches from the child who fired a weapon at 11 to the adult seeking redemption. His journey sparks arguments about forgiveness while forcing culture to decide if transformation deserves acceptance.